For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask to address the House for 1 minute for the purposes of inquiring about next week's schedule.
Without objection.
I thank the Speaker, and I yield to the gentleman from Maryland, the Majority Leader, for the purpose of announcing next week's schedule.
I thank the Republican whip for yielding, and on Monday the House is not in session. On Tuesday the House will meet at 12:30 p.m. for morning hour debate and 2 p.m. for legislative business, with votes postponed until 6:30 p.m. On Wednesday and Thursday, Speaker Crowderville, the House will meet at 10 a.m. for legislative business. On Friday, no votes are expected in the House. We will consider several bills under suspension of the rules. The complete list of suspension bills will be announced by the close of business today. In addition, we will consider H.R. 4247, Keeping All Students Safe Act, and further action on the jobs agenda. And I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. And Mr. Speaker, we have 4 weeks before our next district work period, and I'd like to inquire from the gentleman about the upcoming legislative schedule during the next 4 weeks and what bills does he expect the House to consider prior to the Easter recess.
Gentlemen,
I yield.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I would expect a number of items, certainly the jobs agenda, which will be fulsome, and we will be pursuing over the next months. Small business growth, tax cuts to spur growth and jobs will certainly be on the agenda in the coming weeks, in addition to addressing health care and the 2011 budget.
I thank the gentleman for that. So from my understanding, we can expect to have a vote on a health care bill between now and the Easter recess. If that is the case, I'd ask the gentleman, Mr. Speaker, what is the thought about what that bill would look like? And I would ask the gentleman, does he expect this bill to be the President's bill, or will there be actually a chance for the minority to participate in crafting a health care bill? And I yield to the gentleman.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Well, the gentleman and I had the opportunity, a historic opportunity, I might say, to participate in an extraordinary event in the history, perhaps, of our country. I'm not sure that I can cite another instance, certainly in my career, when a president has spent a whole day sitting with the legislative branch, the leadership both of the Republican and Democratic Party in the Senate and the House, and also of the committee chairs. I think that was an unprecedented meeting. I thought it was an extraordinarily good meeting for the American public, as I thought it was a good meeting for all of us who participated. I think what the public saw was each side thoughtfully and clearly from an informed basis expressing their view as to what was needed and how to get to where we wanted to get. It also indicated, I think, to the American public legitimate differences of opinion on the ways and means, if you will, of affecting health care reform, which obviously the overwhelming numbers of the American public believe is necessary. As I quoted, as you recall, both President Obama and presidential candidate McCain in the debate in October of 2004 both said that health care reform was necessary, and presidential candidate McCain indicated that he thought that we needed a program that covered all Americans with affordable health care. Now, that's the context in which we're going to move forward. I thought it was a productive, positive opportunity for us and, as I say, the American public. We are moving forward. The President indicated we've been moving forward. The President, as you point out, I don't think he has a bill yet, but he's put language of the 11-page document you've seen and that was referenced at the meeting. He's put that on the table. It is obviously an attempt to reach an agreement between the Senate-passed bill and the House-passed bill, which is, although this was not a conference in the classic sense of a conference, in many ways it was I suppose, a super conference, in that rarely is the President in the room, but obviously Republicans and Democrats are in the room and had their time to discuss. President's proposals at trying to resolve differences between the two parties, between the two houses, certainly is going to be taken into consideration over the next few days, I would think, to see whether or not there can be a resolution. In addition to that, I tell my friend honestly that we went through a number of aspects of the health care bill in which I think we found common ground, and many of us said that. I think some of us were surprised that some members were as focused as we think we are on certain items. First of all, I think there was agreement on principle, if not on application of that principle, and that was that the solution is to be found in the delivery of health care through the private sector. And in fact, both bills in the Senate and the House provide for private sector insurance companies to be involved and to be the insurers and to be the agents for financing health care insurance for Americans. In addition, Dr. Coburn was very clear on he thought we needed to focus on wellness, on prevention. There is, in both bills, substantial provisions which deal with that, with wellness and prevention, best practices, with innovation, with efficiencies in the delivery of health care, health information technology, other issues. In addition, he spoke of eliminating fraud, waste, and abuse. As you recall, both of us listened to him. He made the point that he thought 1 in 3 health care dollars were not spent on the delivery of health care. Now, they weren't all waste, fraud, and abuse. We know that there are very substantial administrative costs in health care. And as I responded to Senator Coburn, there's very substantial provisions related to waste, fraud, and abuse in both bills and in the President's suggestion. In addition, the purchasing of policies of insurance across state lines was discussed by both sides. I think the President indicated, I think we can reach agreement on that. I hope we do. And insurance pooling to acquire health insurance at lower prices was also discussed, not only with respect to small business, but obviously we discussed it with respect to individuals who do not have availability of group policies. The answer, therefore, to your question is we certainly hope we can move forward. We hope we can reach some areas of agreement. I want to tell you very frankly, I don't think we have any intention of starting over with a clean slate as you requested. I want to be honest with the gentleman. Literally thousands and thousands of hours have gone into countless hearings participated in by both of our parties, countless markups, public markups with amendments offered both in the House and the Senate. But that does not mean that these are set in stone. And therefore, the answer to your question is I continue to be interested in your thoughts. But if the thoughts are simply to as Mr. Boehner indicated, just scrap it, and Mr. Alexander said that as well, I frankly don't think that's a very productive direction to go in, given the complexity and challenge that confronts us. There was a lot of discussion about polling data in yesterday's meeting. In point of fact, we believe that the polling data does indicate that Americans are not happy with this bill. In my view, in part, they're not happy because they've seen it be the center point of confrontation, controversy, and from my perspective, a lot of misinformation. But having said that, I think every poll seems to reflect that when you ask them about component parts, do they believe that pre-existing conditions ought not to be a disabling factor in the receipt of insurance? A very high percentage of the American public says yes, they think that ought to be not a factor. Do they think that there ought to be lifetime caps? They think no. If they have insurance, they want to keep it. And if they get really sick, they want to make sure their insurance compensates them for that. They also want to make sure that they don't not bankrupted in a year, that they have a very serious illness because the insurance company has capped what they can get in any 1 year. So there seems to be, on the individual items, a pretty high support. When I say pretty high, high 50s, 60s, and sometimes in the low 70s, of various component parts of the bill. I think if we can respond to that which the public is for and listen to the public, I think we can have some success, and we look forward to working with you over the next few weeks to see if we can come to agreement. The President made it very clear that he wants to do that. I reiterate, we want to do it, but the President also made it clear if we can't do it, then we're going to proceed. And that's what he told the American people he was going to do. And very frankly, he was elected handily just a little over a year ago. And he said what he wanted to do was a health care plan which would provide access to Americans to affordable quality health care. And in fact, that's what John McCain said in that debate in October of 2008 when they were both debating one another. That was not a contentious issue. They had differences of how to get there, but covering all Americans with affordable quality health care was not one of the contentious issues. I know that was a long answer, but I wanted to place in context for my friend so that productively we can work on what has passed the House, passed the Senate, and if we can make changes that would lead you or members of your party to support legislation, then I think we can have a productive discussion about that. On the other hand, frankly, if it's simply scrap all the work you've done or we're not going to play, then I think we won't have much progress. I yield back to my friend.
I thank the gentleman for that in-depth explanation of where he and his side is in this debate. And without prolonging this colloquy, would just say to the gentleman, on display yesterday were clearly two different visions for how we want to address health care in this country. Clearly, the Republicans, by our attendance there and the engagement in that discussion, indicated that we too care about people's health care and want to do something to increase the quality, access, and affordability. We just have a very different way of trying to go about it. There are some areas in concept where we do have agreement. We just don't care for the bill. And the reason is, Mr. Speaker, the bill, from our opinion, is very much a bill which imposes on people in this country a preferred way of going about providing health care and covering people in terms of their illnesses. And we believe that, on balance, it is better to err on the side of people and their individual choices and the way they think their health care should be delivered and in what form. So I look forward to perhaps the gentleman working with us to see if we could move away, if he doesn't like the word scrap, move away from the construct of the bill, which, as the gentleman indicates, the public has rejected, as well as a big, significant portion of his caucus has rejected, and perhaps moving away from that construct and to try and address some of the issues that we discussed in a different context would be a way forward. But if, as the gentleman indicates, the majority is unwilling to set aside the Senate bill, will the gentleman indicate whether we would then proceed with reconciliation, and is it his position that he will not take reconciliation off the table? And I yield.
It is my position in the Republican tradition of using reconciliation for very major pieces of legislation. All of your tax bills in 2001 and 2003. As a matter of fact, reconciliation has been used 22 times since 1980. 16 of those times was used by the Republican Party when you were in charge. Apparently you thought that was a procedure that was appropriate to pass. As a matter of fact, Judge Gregg, when he was criticizing us for criticizing reconciliation, said, "What's wrong with a majority vote?" We think there's nothing wrong with a majority vote. There is a filibuster in the Senate. That's under their rules. I think those rules are impeding the work of the American people, but be that as it may, they are the rules. There's also a rule that provides for consideration of legislation through a process that is called reconciliation, a fancy name for simply saying there are things that are important, you can put them on the table, and you can pass them in a time frame, but as Americans would expect, a majority of the people, of the representatives of the American people, have to vote for it. So that I'm not going to take that off the table, but it has been our the President's expression, my expression, the Speaker's expression, the Majority Leader of the Senate's expression. We'd prefer not to use that, not because we think it's a wrong procedure, but because we'd like to create a broader consensus if we can. But I will tell my friend in terms of, I think he to some degree misquoted me. I think you could draw that inference. The American people don't like the bill because what surrounds it. When you ask them about the internals of the legislation, as I said, they respond positively to it. And I will tell my friend about polls, a lot of expression about polls yesterday in our meeting. My friend will recall that we considered expanding the children's health insurance program. And you'll recall President Bush vetoed that program. You'll recall that I sat on this floor, or stood on this floor, and said, "Do you understand 72% of Americans are for expanding S-chip?" Notwithstanding that, we couldn't get sufficient votes from your side of the aisle to override the President's veto, notwithstanding the fact that 72% of the American people thought that children in the richest country on the face of the earth ought to be covered, ought to be healthy, ought to be included in our health care system. So you saw it differently. I understand that. You used your judgment. I frankly think that the American people want to do what we're trying to do. They want to make sure we do it right and don't undermine the security they now have, and that's our intent as well. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for those remarks. I would ask the gentleman if we could turn, Mr. Speaker, to the question of jobs. As he indicated, that will be a focus of the next 4 weeks. The gentleman said earlier in this colloquy that we just participated in a historic event yesterday, that he in his career here has not seen an opportunity like that where both sides sat down with the President for 7 hours and the President spent the time on the issue of health care. In that vein, in terms of trying to open up dialogue and discussion, it would be very appropriate, I believe, Mr. Speaker, for us to give equal or more time to the pressing issue of jobs in this economy. And, Mr. Speaker, Leader Boehner and I have forwarded the gentleman as well as Speaker Pelosi a letter indicating that we'd like to have a bipartisan jobs summit akin to what we had yesterday with the President, but perhaps just in this body. And the Speaker's press reports have indicated that the Speaker is willing to engage in such a jobs summit. And I would just like to ask the gentleman if he intends to respond to the Leader in my letter, and if not, certainly responding here is just as well, as to perhaps a scheduled time for such a summit to occur, and I yield.
I think the same letter was sent to both of us, and I was yielding to the Speaker to respond, but I will respond here. I think that's a good idea.
I thank the gentleman for that. Does he have any sense of when we could expect the acceptance and the scheduling of such an event?
Well, let me talk to the Speaker about it and see what schedule, and we'll talk to you about it. But I think certainly jobs is an absolutely critical objective of ours this year, as you know, as it was last year. The good news, as you know, is that CBO says that over 1 million jobs were created in the last quarter or retained in the last quarter as a result of the Recovery and Reinvestment Act. As the gentleman also knows, in the last quarter of the last 3 months of the Bush administration, we lost on average per month 726,000 jobs. As the gentleman also knows, on average over the last 3 months, we've lost 35,000 jobs. That's an extraordinary, that's 5% of what we lost the last 3 months just a year ago. So that's progress. We're moving forward, but that's not success. Success will be, as you and I both know, when we're adding jobs, when we're creating jobs. Unfortunately, over the last 8 years, we've had the lowest job production in this country than we've had since Herbert Hoover. And as a result, we are very much down in terms of supply of jobs for people who are out of jobs and need jobs to support themselves and their family. So I will tell the gentleman, and I want to also say, I want to thank the gentleman and his colleagues on his side of the aisle for their positive participation yesterday. Positive in the sense that, yes, we didn't agree, but nobody expected there to be agreement down there. Everybody was all of a sudden going to change their perspective on how you get to where we all want to get. But I thought the American people, as I said, had an opportunity to see some serious people who had differences of opinion, discuss them in a civil and, I thought, productive manner. I think that's a good civics opportunity for the American people, and very frankly, we ought to do more of that, because unfortunately all too often they see us on the floor, not on the uncontentious, which we do pretty much working together, but they see us on the contentious, where tempers can get pretty hot, and the American public draws the inference that that's all we do. And they don't like it, and I don't blame them. I know you and I don't like it either. So I want to thank you and your colleagues for your participation.
I thank the gentleman for that. And in closing, Mr. Speaker, I look forward, along with the leader and the rest of my colleagues, to begin working with the gentleman and the majority to start on an earnest attempt to create an environment for job creation so that people in this country can get back to work. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.